struggles in our lives. And the first one today is betrayal, and then a temptation next week, and it goes on and on. But very good lessons. And today we're talking about Joseph. And in Jeremiah 29:11 through 13, it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you. Plans to give you a future and a hope." And he said, "You will come to me and you will pray, and I will listen. And I will listen to you, and you will seek me, and you will find me when you seek me with all your heart." So Jeremiah 29:11-13 is one of my favorites. I know it's Linda's favorite. But he says, "I know the plans I have for you." So he's way ahead of us with all our plans. So anyway, we're looking at Genesis 37 today. God is at work, even when it is not obvious. Kelly sang a song one time called Waymaker, that it says, "Even when I don't see it, you're working." So God is always working. The book of Genesis, provides? Yeah, provides. I didn't hurry. The account of God's people from the time of his promise to Abraham until the deaths of Jacob and Joseph. In the account, God showed how he worked in the lives of Abraham and his extended family to guide them in keeping with his plan for his people. And he likewise worked in the life of Joseph. So today we're talking about Joseph. And did y'all read the story about in your book about Kevin? He was a church planner. Yes. And it mentioned here, trust is a valuable commodity. And it really stings when that trust disappears. And it says, "Have you had a friend turn his back on you?" You ever had that? Yeah. And a sibling filed a lawsuit against you or something like that, but it can be crushing sometimes. Betrayal can. There's something going on right here we got to see here.
No, it was somebody else's phone. I put it on mute.
And I'm going to silence my phone.
I
thought it was
okay.
Sissy's phone ringing.
Well, I think it was somebody else's phone ringing. I muted everybody.
Okay.
Okay.
I like the story because Kevin went to be a church planner and he felt called to start a new church. But he didn't know a lot about administration. And so he gathered in people to help him. Did you like that? But what happened to those people? They turned against him and they had him fired. And so they fired Kevin from the church. I read a little section on over here where it says he was doing fine today, but he went through that. So God still works. He works in very unusual ways at times, but he's always ahead of us. So I thought when I had pneumonia, I thought, what in this world, Lord, are you telling me? But for 7 months, I've asked him about this finger. But anyway, a lot of things happen to us, and we know that the Lord is always ahead of us, but we do oftentimes wonder. And my brother reminded me again yesterday of trusting God with all your heart. He repeated that to me. Lean not on your own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. So now we're going to read Genesis 37, 1 through 5.
Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought his father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of the other brothers, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that his father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word of him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers, they hated him all the more. Well.
I'm telling you, that was sort of a mess, wasn't it? He lived in the land where his father had stayed, of course, in the land of Canaan. But he was 17 years old, and his mother's name was what? Rachel. And that is actually, we know the story. That's the one that Jacob really loved, was Rachel. And Joseph was her firstborn, and then Benjamin was her second. But also, Rachel had some servants, and so did Leah. If you remember the story, you remember when Jacob worked for his uncle, and then he wouldn't let him marry Rachel, so he married Leah, and then so also he had children by Leah's maidservant, and then he finally got to marry Rachel, but he also had children by her maidservant. So he had 11 or 12 sons, I believe. Had quite a few. So anyway, the family itself was probably a little dysfunctional because he must have been a ladies' man.
He couldn't figure out what was causing it, could he?
I don't think so. But anyway, and it said that, really, I read somewhere where it said that where the brothers was keeping the sheep was about 50 miles from where their home was, which they could probably have been closer. But probably it could have been that they were involved with some other people, because whatever Joseph saw, he thought his daddy needed to know about it. So it says he brought a bad report. So he brought it to him. Now, when my two brothers were down in an old building, there used to be an old cleaners building that we had, and they were trying out smoking. And I saw them, and guess what I did? I went and told Mama, and they told me I was a tattletale, but they said where Joseph was a tattletale at 17 or not, it was bad, and it had to be something that needed to be corrected. So I thought Mama needed to know about it. And so my brother Charles, she said, "Blow your breath on me," and he sucked it in. But little Cecil, he went. And so they knew. Mama knew. So anyway, they got a talking to for sure. But anyway, Jacob just loved Joseph, and he was his favorite. But it caused all kind of problems. And then he made him that coat, which was long sleeve and down to the ground. It wasn't something you'd go out and work in. But he wanted him to go find his brothers, and so when Joseph found them, finally, he came back and brought the bad report and to their father. And it says here that Joseph was a son born to him in his old age, and then they made that long sleeve robe for him, and that just caused more problems, didn't it? And it said that when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, what did they do? They hated him. Yeah. Have you ever seen families like that where Charles always said, Jim said, "Your daddy petted you." But Cecil and Charles didn't worry about it. But, I almost died the night I was born, so I know Daddy prayed a lot for me then. And I'm sure that I was maybe just his pet. Maybe, I don't know.
I think Daddy's
like girls. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
pets, and the boys are the mama's pets.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
they hated him. And then Joseph had a dream. And these dreams, if you remember, one of them, the dreams was that they were bowing to him. The corn or something was bowing. And then later he also had a dream to where they were all bowing to him. So he told them about the dreams. And when he told it to his brothers, what had happened? They hated him more, didn't they? So he had some problems. And on page 98, let's see, somebody read that where it says every family, I believe 98. Yeah, every family suffers.
Every family suffers from generational sins, those sinful habits that were passed from one generation to the next. Joseph's father, Jacob, was no exception. Blind to his fault of favoritism, Jacob had made huge mistakes that would flow down to his kids and deeply affect the whole family. Jacob's two most obvious flaws were his acceptance of cultural polygamy and the blatant presence of favoritism.
You know, and I've wondered a lot of times about why the men had so many wives and things back then. But this says that was a big problem there. And anyway, but he was blind to his fault of favoritism. But if you remember, his mother, Isaac and his mother had Jacob and Esau, and Jacob and Esau had all kind of problems. Jacob had to leave eventually. Esau, his daddy, loved him, so Jacob had to leave. Well, then that was just sort of passed on down. Here is Jacob now, and he's showing favoritism to Joseph and not the other brothers. Now there was 12 of them. That's quite a bit. That's quite a few brothers to talk to. Somebody on page 100 read. Let's see. Where it says Joseph's story helps us. Let's see. Yes, there on page 100, Joseph's story.
Joseph's story helps us see how we can all trust the Lord to help us through our everyday family problems. The study of family systems and generational dysfunction have generated myriad discussions. We all have brokenness in our family histories. Like fish swimming in foul water, we are often unaware of the toxic elements of our biological families. As you read the story of Joseph, be aware of your unique family story and how it has shaped you. God wants to use it, all of it, to bring glory to his name.
Yeah, so God uses everything, doesn't he? All is used according to him and for his glory. So, anyway, the title of this section was, It May Not Be Your Fault. And it wasn't Joseph's fault. He didn't have anything to do with them hating him, except that they just didn't, they knew that his daddy, he was the daddy's favorite. Then his daddy made things worse by what? Making that coat of many colors. And he would wear that, and they didn't like it. They hated him even more. So then we go to the next part, which says, let's see, the peril of animosity and jealousy. So animosity, again, is sort of a way of hating you. So we look at that, and this is in Genesis 37, 19 through 24. And somebody read that for us.
They said to one another, "Oh look, here comes that dream expert.
Uh-oh.
So now,
Yeah.
come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of the pits. We can say that a vicious animal ate him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." When Reuben heard this, he tried to save him from them. He said, "Let's not take his life." Reuben also said to them, "Don't shed blood. Throw him into this pit in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him," intending to rescue him from them and return him to his father. When Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped off Joseph's robe, the robe of many colors that he had on. Then they took him and threw him into the pit. The pit was empty without water.
Yeah. They really, in their hearts, they want to kill him. They want him out. And sometimes that is in our hearts sometimes. I mean, I hope it's not in our hearts, but sometimes when you just hate somebody so much.
Imagine hating somebody so bad that I would want to.
And this was their brother. I can't either. And, oh, look, here comes that dream expert. See? Oh, he had already told them his dreams. So, and they thought, well, I'm sure they thought nothing of the dreams except just made them madder. And then they said, let's kill him, didn't they? Mm-hmm. Now, Reuben was the oldest of all the brothers. So, and let's kill him and throw him into one of the pits. And then what were they going to do? They were going to kill an animal, put blood on his robe, send that robe back to his daddy and tell him that an animal, it just had a big lie, the whole thing. So we can say that. Then we'll see what becomes of this dream.